Hi guys, it's Stephen Freeborn from freeborntrainingsystems.com, and real quick, I want to tell you why I think carbs are your problem. I think in the last 5 or 10 years, there's been a lot of fear mongering around carbohydrates, all these low carb diets, paleo, and while those plans can be successful, I think a lot of people's individual food preferences dictate that they like to enjoy carbs in their diet, and I think that's fine. I don't think carbs are inherently evil, though. What I think is carbs are your problem because you eat too many of them. And I think most people aren't aware of how many carbs they're eating on a daily basis. And that's a problem because carbs are easy to overeat in large amounts, which leads to a calorie surplus, which leads to weight gain. So it's not that you should be afraid of carbs. It's not that you should avoid all carbs. It's that you have to be more mindful of your food choices and try to spread your daily caloric intake across all three macronutrients. I would say spreading it across relatively evenly, or depending on your goal, you can skew your intake towards one nutrient or the other, depending on what your goal is and your individual food preference. And if you know how many calories you eat in a day, if you stay below that or at it, you won't see that weight gain. But carbs tend to not be very satisfying, which means you can overeat on them, which means if you overeat, you gain weight. So here's what I think the problem is this is why I think carbs are your problem, but this is how to make carbs not your problem. So this is, I think, what probably most people's kind of daily caloric intake looks like, broken down by percentage of macronutrients. So most people probably take about 60% of their calories in carbs, and most people probably take 20% in fat, and most people probably take 20%, if 20%, in protein. And I think this is the problem, right? Protein and fat are satisfying. They leave us feeling full and leave us feeling full for longer, which means we're not going to eat as frequently and we're not going to eat as much, which is good. That'll help us stick to our calorie needs. That'll help us keep us from gaining weight. However, when you're eating like this, you're going to eat a ton of carbs and you're going to eat very little fat and very little protein at each meal, which means that you're going to be able to eat a ton more carbs, which leads to more calories, which leads to weight gain. You're going to overshoot your calorie needs. So this is why carbs are your problems. You eat too many of them. So we've got to get to a more moderate place, and we've got to start being more mindful. I mean, for example, there's times when I see people's plates that are literally nothing but a bunch of carbohydrates. That's not what they see, because they see pasta, potatoes, and some kind of bread. They see 3 distinct different foods. But really, most of the calories from each of those foods are coming from carbohydrates. You need to be having a more evenly distributed, more balanced macronutrient supply at each meal. So it needs to be split more evenly. So we need to come from this to something that's more like this. So maybe 30% is from carbs. Maybe 35% is from fat. And maybe 35% is from protein. All right, so it's more evenly distributed, and we're eating more fats and protein, which is going to make us more satisfied. So it's just about not getting rid of carbs or being scared of carbs or thinking carbs are inherently the problem. It's eating too many carbs is the problem. They don't leave us satisfied. They don't leave us fulfilled. They don't leave us full, and they don't allow us to keep our calorie intake in check. So we need to move to a more moderate carb intake, with more fat intake and more protein intake. That way we can start feeling fuller. We don't have to eat as much food. We can maintain or lose weight. And we can provide our body with the other nutrients it needs to do the stuff it needs to do. So I hope this kind of helps and gives you kind of an idea of why carbs are currently your problem. There are too many in your diet. There's too many around you. You're buying too many at the store. And how you can go from making them not your problem, where you're still consuming carbs, you're still consuming plenty of carbs, but now you're spreading more of your calories into fat and protein, getting more even distribution and feeling more satisfied, and hopefully therefore eating less food. I'm not going to ignore the fact that this is a more complicated topic than just stop doing this, do that. I understand that. This is more for your education. This is more for you, help you visualize to see, okay, I'm just eating too many carbs. It's not that carbs are completely bad for me. It's that an excess of carbs is what's my downfall. So I hope this helps. If you guys want to talk about it more, I'd be happy to do that. Shoot me an email at sfreeborn7@gmail.com or drop a comment below. I'd be happy to reply. But until then, I hope you guys are having a great day and have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you guys later.